Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Evoke Therapy Program's broadcast. I'm Dr. Brad Reedy. Today is Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to help your child while you are still healing. I'm not quite sure where this title came from. Sometimes I take suggestions from the audience, sometimes I take it from my own team. And so I think somebody in the audience or somebody from my own team had this question. How do you do this? How do you help a child when you yourself are still on this healing journey? So whatever it is, I think it's a great title. I think it's a great idea. And I'm excited to get into it. Before I get into tonight's topic, I just want to give the announcement again of the all-day young adult workshop in New York City on November 4th, facilitated by Reedy, a fantastic facilitator. This is a great workshop for young adults if you're looking to get unstuck, if you're looking to find elusive questions to your purpose in life, wherever you are in your life, if you're dealing with anxiety, depression, substance use, or if you're just looking for clarity and looking for a place to find yourself. So that'll be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is almost free at just $50 per registration. So if you know somebody, if you're in New York City and you want to do something for yourself, I can't think of a better use of a day and a better use of $50. Just contact Becky at evoketherapy.com. That's BECCI at evoketherapy.com. So let's begin the topic for tonight: how to help my child while I am still healing. I took a couple of quotes from the drama The Gifted Child, and if you know me, you know this is the book that I think is the single most important book that's ever been written about child and child development and parenting. And this is what Dr. Miller wrote. She wrote, "For a mother can react empathically only to the extent that she has become free of her own childhood. If she denies the vicissitudes of her early life, she wears invisible chains. What the mother had once failed to find in her own mother, she was able to find in her child, someone at her disposal who could be used as an echo and could be controlled, who was completely centered on her, would never desert her, and offered her full attention and admiration." Yes, it is something that I preach and teach often, that we have to do our own work, and we can only, as therapists and as parents, we can only help people insofar as we've done the work ourselves. But tonight's topic is going to say this. First of all, we're always healing. We never arrive. The question of how can I help my child while I'm always while I'm still healing is to say I'm still human. I'm still a person. There's still things I can learn, still things I can improve about myself. And the biggest disaster in the healing journey, really, besides maybe never beginning it, that's maybe a clear number one. But right after that, maybe a 1A is ending, arriving, concluding that you've done all of your work, that there's nothing left to learn in this process. So yes, we have to do our own work, but the shift, what your children need from you is the shift. I said the other night that if you couldn't think of doing something for your child that will make a difference, if you just want a simple assignment, the thing I would offer to you, the thing I often offer to parents when I'm doing a 1 hour consultation, is go home and apologize to your child. Next time you see them, find something about yourself that you recognize that you've done wrong, either a theme, a pattern, or a specific incident, and apologize to your child. Now, they might dismiss you, they might not react to it the way that you want, but that apology signals a difference. It signals a departure from the fundamental idea that so many adults, so many parents have in parenting, which is it's my job to fix and shape the child up to be the way that I think they need to be. That my project is molding my child. When really, the way that I think about it is, and the way what the research suggests overwhelmingly is, your project ought to be your project, ought to be you. Your project ought to be you. And when you can shift the project from fixing the child to working on yourself, you have, in essence, shifted the entire energy in the relationship. I'll talk about this as we go. I have so many things to say about this evening. There's this idea sometimes, and I think it's often taught by our field, the field of working with children in treatment. This idea that if I can fix the parent, or if the parent is fixed, simply put, if the parent can set healthy boundaries consistently, that the child will be fixed somehow. But that idea that fixing the child through you, mom and dad, really is the poison and not the cure. It is to say that you're the object, that your job is to manipulate the object, and the object is the child. It turns the child into an object. I know most everybody has heard the phrase sexual objectification. We talk about that all the time in our talks around sexuality, and the sexes. But objectification is more broad. Objectification is this idea that you reduce a human being to their parts. Specifically in the 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 idea of the child, it's not turning the child into a sexual object, it's turning the child into its behaviors. Turning a child into good and bad, turning the child into an extension of you. The difference between turning a child into an object and treating the child like a human is that objects can be manipulated. If I go flip that light switch over there on the wall, up or down, the lights have no choice but to be acted upon by me. The light switch and the electricity in my house is the object, and I can manipulate it clearly, freely. But human beings aren't objects. Human beings have that magical space in between stimulus and response where they get to decide, consider an option. And of course, the more work they do, the more they can decide and the more they can consider. So, recovery from, for example, codependency doesn't cure anybody else's addiction. This is from the journey, from the audacity to be you. Professionals would be wise to avoid teaching or implying that recovering from codependency will resolve anyone else's problems. That is one of the initial problems with the codependence thinking. Recovery from codependency, as some suggest, is not about simply setting stricter boundaries. It's about setting better boundaries. And better boundaries refer to their quality, the intention, and the idea behind the boundary. The boundary's purpose is to separate and distinguish people's emotional lives from one another so that they can be connected in a healthier way. It's really shifting the idea of what it means to be a person in relationship to another person. Recovery from codependency means different boundaries, and the difference is rooted in each person's differentiation and love. So I don't teach you, I don't do these broadcasts to fix your children. Parent education doesn't fix children. Parent education changes the parent. And that change can have a wonderful impact on the child. The child is free to start healing when you begin to start healing. It is this shift that I talk about when I say parent work isn't for the child, it's for the parent. And any healthy change in a parent will have a wonderful impact on a child. Parent work doesn't result in well behaved children either. The result of good parenting is its own reward. It's better living, it's being a better human, a better friend, a better boss, a better employee, a better daughter, a better son, a better sibling, a better partner or spouse, a better parent. The result of good parenting is its own reward. Good parenting brings peace, clarity, courage, and capacity. I'll slow down. I know I'm a fast talker, so I'll slow down to make this point. This work is to encourage, without shame and guilt, to encourage anyone who's listening or watching to embrace the reality that your distress, your serenity and peace of mind, your unhappiness is fundamentally your responsibility. And that it's nobody else's job to make you happy. Now, I know that loving somebody and watching them hurt and suffer causes what I refer to as empathic misery. You can see the pictures over my shoulder if you're watching the video version of this. You can see pictures of my children. I am in some way connected to them and their pain. But if that connection becomes so rigid and so powerful that my peace, my serenity, my clarity, my well-being is directly tied to them, I am putting my responsibility on them. I am asking them to take care of me. I am saying that what I feel, this is exactly, by the way, what they accuse you of. Now we know where they get it. I am saying when I say that, that my serenity is tied to you. I am saying that you have to be well. You have to behave a certain way. You have to do something. You have to change so that I am okay. If you don't do that, I won't be okay. If you do that, I'll be at peace. I can sleep at night. I can rest. I won't be anxious and wringing my hands. The fact of the matter is that it's our responsibility to begin the healing journey. And it's only when we do that can we show the child the way. I talked about this in the accountability broadcast. You want to teach your child accountability? Model it. You want to teach them vulnerability? Children that come to our program are asked to do some really hard things, to walk into a group of strangers and tell their story, to read letters from home that talk about the problems, the issues that were going on at home. It's one of the reasons, not the only reason. It's one of the reasons why I ask at the end of every broadcast that everybody listening to me try attending at least 6 of 12 of the 12-step support groups, Al-Anon or Codependence Anonymous. It's hard to walk into a room. It's hard to walk into a therapist's office and open up. It's hard to express vulnerability. Yet when we're on the outside looking in, especially with our children, we're focused on and teaching them about all the benefits. But we ourselves are sometimes afraid to do the very same work that we're asking our children to do. That's why, as a therapist, I don't ask you to do things that I'm not doing. I'm still struggling. I still make mistakes. I'm still healing in this process. How can I help parents to heal when I'm still healing? Because that's the only way. There is nobody that you either haven't started the healing journey or you're on it. Or you've made the error, like I said in the beginning, that you've arrived, that you concluded. But that's just as bad, almost as bad as never beginning it. The only thing you can do is be on the healing journey. I'm always amazed by my therapist. She's 30 years my senior. And just last week on our Friday session, she said she just got out of a class. This woman, I cannot explain how intelligent she is and how much training she has and how much experience she has. She's written something like 50 books by now, 40 something books by now. Several postdocs. The accolades and the resume is second to none in terms of being a therapist. And she's still attending classes and she's still healing and she's still stumbling and picking herself back up. She's still apologizing to me when she thinks she makes a misstep or I tell her that I'm upset. Really, what you're showing your children by beginning and staying on your healing journey is you're showing them what it's like to be human. Isn't that the greatest gift? Like I've been saying, isn't that what the stories and the movies and the books that we read, the fiction that we read, the myths that we study, isn't that what they're trying to teach us? Is it's about being human. It's not about being good or right or perfect or complete. It's about being human. That's something we can do, but we can't be good, right? Not completely, not wholly, not without fault. There is nobody like that. We can at best just hope to be human. The hope comes in this way. Alice Miller says, if a child is lucky enough to grow up with a mirroring, available mother who is at the child's disposal, that is a child's development, then healthy self-feeling can gradually develop in the growing child. Ideally, this mother should also provide the necessary emotional climate and understanding for the child's needs, right? That's the hope. And we all have that more or less, right? But here's where it gets important. But even a mother who is not especially warm-hearted can make this development possible if only she refrains from preventing it and allows the child to acquire from others what she herself lacks. Sometimes we have to outsource some of our work. I have I take my children to the doctor, I take my children to the dentist. All of my children have seen therapists. A couple of them I have sent to a program to get a little bit of extra help. That's all we can hope for. I drop my children off at their sporting events, at their practice, and I leave it up to the coach. Part of it is I want my children to have experience with other adults, not perfect people, of course, but I want them to have other experiences so they know where they came from. And the only way you can know where you came from is if you go away and experience something other, right? The fish is the last to discover water. One of the things that happens when you go and you visit India or Chile or a different part of this country is you see what it is and you start to realize, oh, this is different. People think different. So we give our children the opportunities to get help from other people when it's beyond our capacity, when we need help, when we feel like we can't give them what they need for their support and development. And I would say, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That's what that's talking about. And while we might not live in small villages like our historical ancestors did, we have a virtual village, right? Our children go to a local school, private or public school. And in cases where they struggle with mental health and addiction issues, they may go to a therapeutic program. And they can be mad at us for it. They can be angry. They can tell us that they felt punished or rejected by us. They have the right to feel that way. And I'm not even here to say that they're wrong. And if we do our work, if we are taking care of ourselves, if we have a life separate and enough from our children, then we can allow for them to feel any way they want to about us. And it's not their job to feel a certain way about us. It's not their job to like us. It's not their job to love us. It's not their job to be grateful for what we've given them. Those are things that they get to decide in their own hearts if they feel that way, if they think that way about us. And we, because we are the adults, we have to get our needs met somewhere else. We have to do our work. And you will stumble and you will fall. I've said this before that 30 years ago, when my first child was born, I thought he was lucky. I had the arrogance to believe that I was going to get everything. I didn't think I was going to get it perfect. I wasn't completely psychotic, but I thought I was going to do a pretty damn good job, right? Beyond reproach. And I made so many mistakes with him, still do to this day sometimes. Have to apologize once in a while. My conscience dictates as much. And I believe I'm a better parent today than I was 30 years ago. But today I am so much more aware of my mistakes. My wife just asked, this is just hot off the press. My wife just asked our therapist a couple of weeks ago about our dynamic. She said, this is the same therapist that we've both been going to for more than 24 years. She said, tell me again, explain to me the dynamic between Brad and me, she said. And I don't know all the details. If I did, I probably wouldn't tell you. But what she said was, it's just automatic for both of you. You go back into your old modes. He has his wound, the wound of not being seen. You have your wound, the wound of getting it right, whatever it is. And in those moments of tension and conflict, you go to your defensive postures, and it's a compulsion, and the cycle repeats itself. That's my therapist describing me and my wife, who've been in therapy for 24 years, who have been to all those meetings that I invite you to go to, who've studied and worked at this stuff for years. But see, here's the thing. She's right. And the only thing I can do is accept it and look at it. You're not going to get it right. I would imagine most people would attend these broadcasts live or listen to these. If you're like me, most people will attend these thinking, give me some secrets, give me some hacks, give me some way where I can kind of win this game. I'm tired of losing it. But of course, you can't win You can have some small victories here and there along the way, of course, we all do. But you can't get out of this thing alive. You can't get out of this thing on top. All you can do is embrace your humanity, embrace your fallibility, embrace your mental illness, or at least where you are on that continuum. Embrace the parts of yourself that you got rid of to survive and to to feel like you belonged. To reintegrate the parts of yourself that the world, your parents, the big people around you found acceptable. To address your defensiveness, right? Remember the defense that we have, which is synonymous with the symptoms that we have, which is synonymous with the mental illness that we have. The defenses that we have are put in place because there's a threat. And what is the threat? The threat is universally that we're not good and lovable, that we're not worthy of connection. But when you learn to love your horrible, rotten self, when you learn to accept who you are, when I learned to not be defensive about that description that Jamie, our therapist, gave to my wife about my pattern, that it's automatic, that it's repetitive. When I can see that, then I can begin to heal it. But if I have to be good, I have to defend that. I have to justify what I do. I've talked about this lately that I've been really good at theoretically and in broad ways admitting that I'm an idiot as a father, as a person. I've done a good job theoretically of saying that. But in real time, it's really hard because in real time, I have the experience in my mind that the child just doesn't get it or the person just doesn't get it. I need to explain myself. In real time, I have justifications for my behavior that feel rock solid. They feel like they let me off the hook. So we do what we can, and when we can't do enough, we find other ways to support our children. I would argue that parents that are getting help for their children are taking the first step toward helping themselves. When I'm coaching you, all of our curriculum, this very broadcast, you are attending or listening to this broadcast, some of you, because you have a struggling child, or because your co-parenting or your partnership, your marital relationship is struggling, right? You're listening to this because you're in some kind of pain. Just admitting that is the key. That's the most important. That's the first step in AA. Admitting that I was powerless over my problems, that I need help. There's a humility there. There's a willingness to ask. There's an overcoming of shame. So many parents will ask me this question, or let me say that differently. So many, so many parents have had this question asked to them. Why should I have to go away? The child says, why should I have to go away to treatment if it is, at least in part, my parents' issue? Because sometimes I'll say to kids, your parents are still working on things and they're not ready. I even encourage parents to say, we're not ready to have you home when pushed, right? The parent wants to push it off. They don't want to own it, right? Doesn't want to be theirs. So they want to make the problem out there. That's what we do. We take this feeling of inadequacy and we don't want to own that. We don't want to own being overwhelmed or outmatched or just struggling. So it's about somebody else. But in the most profound, authentic way, it is, I need you to be away. And parents will say to me, but how can we say that to them? How can we feel that? And the children will ask them, why do I have to pay for this? And the answer is because there's no other way. The child always pays somewhat for the parent's sins. The sins of the parents are always passed down. So is the healing. That's important to remind you. So is the healing. But you can't not dent your children. You can't not pass on some of your trauma. You'll only not pass on the stuff that you've worked on and healed, right? Or you can start the process and your child can carry it forward. The answer to this question, why should I have to go away from treatment if it is at least in part my parents' issue, is because that's the way it always is. The child is benefits from the parents' skills and gifts and wonderful attributes, and they pay for the parents' deficits. And the only thing we can do is accept that reality. And this doesn't come from me with a bunch of blame or shame. Right? It's not emotional laden. If it is, then you can just blame that on your parents. You can say whatever deficits I have are their fault. But no parent that I work with wants to do that. They will say to me inevitably, it's my responsibility. And you're right. The dents and bruises left over from childhood are yours. What happened to you as a child was not your fault. What you did to your children was not their fault. But now, during adolescence, as it's beginning to manifest itself in the symptoms and the diagnoses that they have, it's their responsibility to deal with it. That is the rite of passage of adolescence to adulthood. What happened to me, not my fault. But healing and addressing and dealing with it is my responsibility. It's a subtle shift. The child doesn't need a perfect parent. If that were the case, every child would be doomed. What the child needs is for the parent to shift their focus. The child needs the parent to make their life, the parent's life, the project. No one likes to be the project. When the parent is able to see that they themselves are their own project, the child is free to focus on their life. We can't wait till the parent's work is done, for it is never done. And in the meantime, the child may need to go somewhere else. Some get some help outside of the family to get help with what they need. One's parents were limited. It is true. They're flawed human creatures. They too had limited parents. This is how they became limited. This is from J.D. Gill, my therapist. One's parents wounded one. It is likely they were wounded in similar fashion, or perhaps much worse. It is entirely appropriate to be angry at one's parents for how they hurt or neglected you. That's what they did. The wound, however, is mine. I am the one they wounded. Since the wound is mine, it is my issue to deal with, not theirs. And if I don't deal with it, I am the one that will be compromised and not them. I think about this all the time, this thought experiment that I'll invite parents to adopt or to try on. I'll say, well, what if the damage is already done? Developmentally speaking, if you have a child in our program at adolescence, developmentally speaking, most of the damage is done. Right? So if that's the case, now what? Should we punish you? Should we put you in jail? What should be your sentence? Well, as far as I'm concerned, your sentence should be to do your own work, to come to terms with your own life, to look at your childhood and your parents critically, to peel back the layers, layer after layer after layer, to understand how your undone work, because you didn't know it, because you didn't know it was there, because you didn't know how to heal it, because you still don't know how to heal it all, you don't know all of it, because that undone work leaves its mark on the child. And they will have the same issue with their children. Even though they're going to make improvements, the vast majority of them will make improvements on the journey that we've begun and that we've initiated them into. Even though they're going to make great progress, they're still going to dent their children. And it won't mean anything to their children if they say things like, well, I had it worse. You should have seen my parents. That's irrelevant to the child. They will have to do the exact same work that I'm inviting you to do if they should choose to have children and want to invest in the child's well-being and their own development. In the journey of the heroic parent, this is one of the chapter headings. I said communication skills. I want to use this specific practical thing, communication skills. Virtually the same principles, the same skills that are taught in every treatment program in the world. Communication skills help us to connect to our children and ourselves. As we become more clear about the relationship between the events in our lives, our thoughts and our feelings, we'll be better able to see our children and provide them with a safe context in which to work through their difficulties. We have at Evoke something we call the I feel statement. We did not invent this, we did not write this. It is, again, there are variations of this, but it is used in virtually all therapeutic settings. An I feel statement is, I feel this way when this happened. I feel this way because I think, and ours has hopes for the future that are within the person's control and without the person's control. I rarely ask people to use this skill when I'm doing therapy, family therapy, or couples therapy. I teach them it. I want them to develop some mastery over it. But day to day, I don't ask them to follow the format rigidly. It feels unnatural, it feels contrived. But what I do want people to understand is this statement, this communication skill is about ownership. The example that I use, if you came up to we met on the street and you tapped me with a friendly tap on my shoulder. And let's say I had been abused as a child physically, and I flinched in fear at your tap. It wouldn't be accurate to say I chose to feel scared or triggered, right? There's no conscious choice in that. But the fear, the flinch is mine. That's what I mean by ownership. It's mine to deal with. I can tell you how I feel, and if you care about me and the thing that I'm asking of you doesn't come at a great cost to you, you'll likely do it. You'll if I say please ask for permission before you touch me and you care about me, you'll likely do that for me. But the ability to not feel the fear and owning it, I own it by going to therapy. That's how I own it. I own it by telling my story, by working on my trauma, by unraveling my history, by recalibrating my nervous system, my flight or flight response, my neural pathways. I own it by taking responsibility for it. And this statement is all about knowing what's going on inside of you. Yes, communication skills can provide a context, a template for connection. But more fundamental to that, it's about you becoming aware of you and owning it. If the statements that you give to your children are, I'm disappointed, I'm proud of you, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm heartbroken. If you give those feelings, even in this format, to your child with the expectation that they should feel some responsibility, some obligation to soothe you, to make you feel better, to make you proud. You're in essence saying, what I feel and think about you is your responsibility. Then the child goes out into the world and they see other beings with two ears on the side, two eyes in front, and a mouth, and they assume this person looks like my parent, same animal. And they start to believe that everybody around them and what everybody thinks and feels about them is about them. They take the template that they had at home of being taught that it was their responsibility to please parents, and they become people pleasers. And eventually, if they become parents, they become child pleasers, right? We are the first peer in the peer pressure indoctrination. I cannot tell you numberless times that I've had parents say, you have to feel good about yourself. And yet at the same time, most parents with just enough therapy, just enough communication skills therapy, with just enough self help books under the belt, I put myself in that category. They'll think that the starting point of healthy parenting is tell your child how you feel. That feeling that you tell them will be the child's indication, the child's North Star about what they're doing, if it's right or wrong, if they should or shouldn't be doing it. When you start your healing journey, you realize nobody else is responsible for your happiness. You're not going to be happy immediately when you start your healing journey, right?
But you can have hope, because if you're the problem, if you're the reason for your suffering. I was just reading a book by Connie Zweig, who wrote and compiled a bunch of books about the shadow. And she talked about going all over the world looking for gurus, India, meditation, every kind of possible healing. And she said, after all of this, after years, I came to believe that I was responsible for my own unhappiness. That's what you want your children to think and feel. Show them, not by teaching them about it, show them by demonstrating it, by taking responsibility for your happiness, for your well-being, for your peace of mind, for your serenity. I love this quote from Cheryl Richardson. She says, people start to heal the moment they feel heard. That's how your healing journey changes the child. Not your healing conclusion, not your completely healed self, which doesn't exist. But your healing journey changes because you take responsibility for your feelings, which allows you, frees you up to be able to see the child for who they are instead of a reflection. When children are just reflections of us, they're objects again. If the child is just a mirror to tell you whether or not you're a good or a bad parent, they have ceased to become the individual that they are. And they have been reduced to being just a mirror. They don't have a self, they don't have agency, they don't have a soul. They're just a reflection of you. They're just the outcome of you. And this is why I'm so passionate in the world of psychotherapy, in the world of treatment, to teach therapists to stop stop treating parents like objects. Stop trying to manipulate parents so that they will better manipulate the child. See the parent, understand the parent, be an effective and healing guide and container for the parents so they can do their own healing. But again, the only therapists that can do that are the ones that have started themselves. That's why I wouldn't trust a therapist doesn't have a consistent and healthy practice of their own self-work, their own self-care. And I'm not talking about simply going out and kayaking. That's a part of it. I'm talking about looking inside, introspection, self-awareness, differentiation. The why of what you say is much more important than how you say it. You know, when I teach therapists, I say you can say some pretty provocative things to a client if it's said from a place of love. And you can also couch your words in perfect communication skills. And it can be really damaging and harmful and weaponized. To be clear, I wrote, communication is not a tool for changing the behavior of others. This is really important. I could read that sentence 20 times. Communication is not a tool for changing the behavior of others. Again, the goal is to not change the other to make ourselves the other to make ourselves feel better. We don't change somebody else so that we feel better. If we do that, we are implicitly telling our children that it is their job to make others happy, which predisposes them to lose themselves and can also create vulnerability to peer pressure. Rather, we use healthy communication skills as a way of allowing two people to be present in their relationship. We tell our children how we feel so we can be present with them and more intentional in our response to them. If you say it from a place of love, if you say it from a place of awareness, from a place of groundedness, from a place of consciousness, it can be effective. If you say it from a place of fear, a place of anger, with an attempt to try to control anybody, doesn't matter how you say it. The thing that gets heard by the child is the intention. I remember years ago, I was in New York City and we had a large class. I was teaching a parent, and in the front row, a parent raised their hand and said, I have this idea that I keep wanting to tell my child how much the program costs. Is that okay? And as I was formulating my response, somebody from the row behind them said, why would you tell your child that? And there was a thoughtful pause. And the person who asked the question said, "Never mind. I know the answer." This mother was asking the question because she thought, if I told my child how much I'm paying, they'll feel obligated responsibility to pay me back with improvement. This parent-child relationship is a one-way thing in so many ways. It's not like a partnership, not like siblings, not like coworkers, not like neighbors. You occupy a place in your parent's mind. Excuse me, you occupy a place in your child's mind far different than they occupy in your mind. You will love them, most likely, you will love them far more than they will love you, as it should be. We love those that we serve. We love those that we help. We love those that we give to. But if we turn it upside down and they become responsible for our security, if they become obligated to not abandon us, if they take it on or are taught or told that they should be grateful to us, right? If in other words, if they are taught that it's their job to parent us and to give us what our parents didn't or couldn't, it's very, very harmful. And so much of our difficulty in parenting is that we're asking something from our children that we should have got from our parents. See, if we grew up with a secure attachment, if we grew up with a secure attachment, we would carry around inside of us a sense of home, a sense of safety, a sense of security. You know that. You've taught this to your children. That if you have a sense of security, nobody can, and I'm speaking of course in abstract, nobody can nobody can get to you, right? You're okay. But how do you do that? You either get it in childhood because you had a secure attachment, which is, I think, pretty rare, or at least there's work left over to be done, or you find somewhere else to get it in self-help groups with a mentor, with a sponsor, with a therapist. Some do it through somatic work, through body work, some through it through meditation. In my experience, it requires another human being. It requires a relationship. If we are wounded in relationship, then wouldn't it make sense that we would be healed by the same mechanism, right? That the thing that left dents and bruises would be the same thing that could heal us? My sense of security today, to whatever it is because I've sat in front of my therapist for 24 years and confessed. I've shown up and showed myself to her, laid it on the table. Sometimes not even consciously, it just happens. And because her response has been consistently compassionate, patient, non-judgmental, I've taken that feeling in and I've made it about me now. I have that sense that I'm okay. Now when somebody says something or does something, I'm more capable, not perfect by any means, but I'm more capable of seeing their behavior as a reflection of them, not of me. We get on our healing journey. We make our lives the project and we free our children up. They stop having to carry our ego on their shoulders, which I would argue is probably a large part of the wound that they have, number one. Number two, even if it's not part of the wound, it doesn't add to whatever wound they're carrying. Our unlived life, our unhealed self, our ego is a heavy, heavy weight on their shoulders. And if their struggles, their setbacks, their sadness, their grief, their pain, their mistakes, if those things weigh on us heavily and we communicate that to them, which we would, which we will, they have this experience that's built into their DNA that they are bad kids. And we teach this all the time. The baby that doesn't cry is the good baby. The baby that's easy for the parents is a good child. But of course, the good child and the good baby is never the real child or the real baby, right? Because the real is imperfect, flawed, human, which is absolutely divinely beautiful. So, yes, we teach the I feel statements. It's in my book, but not for the purpose of controlling or changing somebody else, not so that my child knows how upset I am, not so that my child learns right and wrong from based on how I feel, but we do it to encourage ownership. It's my fear, it's my anger. I'm responsible for it. I have to deal with it. And by naming it, I take away its power. Now my anger doesn't have me, I have my anger, right? It accomplishes something we call intrapsychic differentiation. Interpersonal differentiation is relationship intimacy and connection, right? Intrapsychic means what I feel, what I think, what my perceptions are, what my beliefs are, and how all of that stuff determines how I feel, what I think, what I do. I know the parts of myself. I know that when somebody shows anger, I feel scared and I have some sense of where that came from. I know that when somebody stops talking to me abruptly, that I feel a sense of abandonment and terror. I know that when somebody tells me they're upset with me because of my own childhood, that it can be at times crippling in its anxiety. All of those things are my responsibility to work on, not the child's. And by using the I feel statement as an individual tool, I become more aware of that. Of course, communication errors like recruiting, like everybody thinks so, and trying to be right is the opposite of this saying. And I've said this before, I'm at the point where I almost point I almost point out to parents the idea that that I would not have them share their feelings with their child. And people freak out about that. People just can't believe that I would entertain that thought because of course that's not authentic and the parent has the feeling. Yes, you have your feelings, but your child can't hear them the same. Your feelings land on them with a great amount of weight. They make meaning out of themselves based on your feelings. The infant sees the mother's frown as an indication that something is wrong with them. Parental anxiety that is not owned by the parent, disowned anxiety by the parent, is internalized as to the by the child as something is wrong with me. So again, back to the question, back to the title. The shift is my life is my project, my feelings are my responsibility, my anger, my happiness, my sadness, my despair is mine. My healing is mine. And that will take the rest of my life. But that shift makes all the difference. In a broadcast, I talk about this. I came up with this quote where I was teaching people about healthy boundaries. But again, I wanted to steer parents away from the idea that I'm not teaching you how to be perfect and right all the time. I'm just talking about concepts and ideas and principles for you to chew on and digest, to internalize and to integrate. I'm not preaching a religion. I'm not telling you the three pillars and the four ideas. I mean, I have some of those things, some of those tools, but it's a different way of being, you guys. It's a different way of being. And that can't be manualized. So at the end of this lecture, I said, lastly, after all of this, we can say that we are sorry when we fail. Every parent has limits, and every child will discover the end of those limits. We can say we are sorry when we fall short of the ideal. And with this, the child learns perhaps the most important lesson of all, what it means to be human. Does your child have a difficult time apologizing? A difficult time admitting fault? Owning up to their mistakes? Most likely there's a climate in your family where being right was the thing. Being good was the thing. Most likely you modeled it for them. So how do we undo this idea that being right is the thing and being good is the thing? We own up. We show up as our imperfect self. not so the child has to take care of it, but we show up as our imperfect self as evidence that we are taking care of it. All right, folks. I don't know if any live questions came in, but I'm happy to take them. I'll go over the announcement slides. My book, The Journey of the Heroic Parent and The Audacity to Be You, are available on Amazon and Audible. So if you want those, you can get those there. Obviously, it embodies all the things that I'm talking about and teaching: attachment theory and parenting, relationships. The second book is more about all relationships and not about parenting. It's funny because somebody gave me a review on Amazon that only read this book if you're a parent, but people forget that when I'm talking about parenting and child development, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the adult, talking about the parent, not the child. Talking about the child inside of the adult, inside of the parent. If you want to do your own work, if you want the best outcomes for your children, our intensives are this is the physical manifestation of everything that I'm talking about today. Finding You is that offering. November 8th through 12th is our next Finding You in-person offering. We also have an online version, November 10th through 12th. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. Like I've said in the last several broadcasts, if you don't want to come to ours and you feel like there's a conflict of interest with me selling a product, go to Onsite, go to the Meadows, go to House of Ocala, go to Refuge Recovery, go to the Bridge Recovery. I don't sell things like Gottman. I don't sell things like that, although some people talk about that being very helpful. I'm talking about deep psychodynamic work looking at your childhood. I'm talking about understanding where you came from so that you understand who you are today. December 6th through 10th is after that. I'm going to be starting returning to you tomorrow night. I'm really looking forward to that. My next returning to you, the sequel to Finding You, is March 6th through 10th. I'll be running that. I mentioned the Young Adult Intensive in New York City, November 4th, 10 to 5. And then, of course, in February, we have the Finding Connection, the 4-couple workshop, the Finding You, but with couples, that I'll be running in February 7th through 11th. Custom Finding Connection workshops are also available for couples and co-parents, and also Finding Family for families. You can contact Intensives at Evoke Therapy to learn more about all of our intensive options. And again, I just want to emphasize, these are not psychoeducation. I mean, there is some psychoeducation because that anchors the work, but this is experiential. This is telling your story, and the healing that you experience inevitably is more than you can imagine. And every client will tell you, you learn as much from watching other people do their work as you learn from doing your own work. We have support groups for current and alumni parents. The next offering is this Thursday, October 26th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Once a month, we have an alumni-only meeting. The next offering for that is November 21st at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And then we have the intensives support group once a month. November 7th at 6 p.m. is the next offering. A new email address. If you have any questions, you want to sign up, find out about our support groups, email supportgroups@evoketherapy.com for more information. We have a family trek option, 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days in the wilderness with your child, with your family. If you want to go back and have an experiential outdoor therapeutic experience, this can be in the middle of your child's program. Can be at the end of the child's program. This could be even if you haven't had a child at Evoke. This is an outdoor adventure that has therapy along with it. Contact admissions@evoketherapy.com for more information there. If you want to do coaching, especially as the holidays, I was reminded of the quote from Ramdas as we come into the holidays. Ramdas said, "If you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family." And I know a lot of you are getting ready to do that one way or the other. So in this time of need, you can make use of our coaching services for parents, couples, families, or individual. Contact coaching@evoketherapy.com to find out about the coaches that are available and the one that's a right match for you. We ask all current parents to try, I beg of you, to try at least 6 of the following 12-step support groups: Al-Anon.org, CODA.org, FamiliesAnonymous.org, or AdultChildren.org. You can also try RefugeRecovery.org. It's a Buddhist-inspired recovery program with less of an emphasis on a higher power. Or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org, has free classes and resources in your local community. All of these broadcasts are available on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. Just search Finding You, an Evoke Therapy podcast, and listen and subscribe there. or you can go to soundcloud.com on your computer and you can find Finding You and Evoke Therapy podcast there. You can find Evokes, you can find the rebroadcast of these, the video broadcast with the slides and my video image on Evoke's YouTube channel by subscribing to Evoke Therapy Programs YouTube channel. You can also find Evoke Therapy Programs and me, Dr. Brad Reedy, on X, formerly known as Twitter, Threads, and Instagram, using the handles at Evoke Therapy and at Dr. Brad Reedy, respectively. And Evoke Intensives has an Instagram account for quotes, inspiration, announcements. And the handle for our Instagram account for Evoke Intensives is at Evoke Therapy Intensives. On Facebook, you can find us by searching Evoke Therapy Programs or Evoke Therapy Intensives. And of course, our Evoke Therapy blog has wonderful content each week. If you want to give back or you need help, these are organizations that help people that can't afford treatment. The 3 partners that we work with and donate to include ChooseMentalHealth.org, Sky'sTheLimitFund.org, or EvokeFamilyFoundation.org. Your tax deductible donation can be earmarked for a specific program or a specific population or issue if that's near and dear to your heart. All right, folks, my next broadcast will be a ways out, November 1st. So just over a week from today, November 1st at 6 o'clock. I'll be taking any questions that are left over from tonight or any questions, topics, suggestions that you want to send. You can always email us in between episodes at webinar@evoketherapy.com. I will take any of the pre-submitted questions at the top of the queue next week and answer those first. All right, folks, I hope this is a helpful point of contact. And as always, for and on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you, thank you for showing up and being able to and willing to look at yourself and your part in this process and doing your work. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.